everybody, and welcome back to Project 224, where we are committed to applying the true knowledge and wisdom found only in Christ to the everyday world around us. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Project 224. My name is Hayward.
I'm Paul.
We are glad you're back with us. So first of all, everybody, thanks so much for just being a part of this.
Absolutely.
It's like a family, seriously. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but if it wasn't for you, we'd just be talking to each other. So
Talking to the air.
yeah, so we appreciate you guys.
We'd be like that old guy on the corner who's just yelling at the sky.
That would be us.
It still might be me later in life.
It might be, but we really appreciate you guys. All the feedback and comments, and man, just things that we hear back from you guys. Not only from our own church members, from people we haven't met yet. So it's just been great. So thank you for the support. Please continue to like, share, whatever you have to do to get the word out there.
Yeah, leave comments, leave ratings or your reviews on iTunes. Leave comments on Facebook. Let us know what's up on Instagram. I was just commenting how new I am at all this stuff and trying to figure it out. So, we're still trying to figure out the Facebook and the Instagram. I don't do a lot of personal posting. I just don't feel like I have anything to say on that. That's just, I don't know, other than like, hey, look at my kids. So,
Yeah, I try to get really careful on social media because wars happen really easy.
oh my goodness.
Oh, it's so sad.
Yeah, but for this thing, we definitely want to be engaged. So we're definitely learning how to be better at it. And
Yeah.
I was just telling Hayward that Instagram has that new thing where you can do like upright video, and it's supposed to be the next great thing because people can just do video on their phone. And I'm like, yeah, we can do video on my phone, but I'm not. I don't know. I'd be really shy. I just feel like all of a sudden, I can talk all day, but all of a sudden it's like my face is there, and I'd be like a possum, just like, what's going on?
When you texted me that, I was sharing that with Jenny, and I started cracking up laughing. She's like, "What's so funny about that?" I was like, "I don't know. I just kind of pictured that happening. I don't know. I just thought it was funny."
Yeah, But anyways, so you know what? We're getting into the fall season. We're out. So Florida. If you're not from Florida, I just need to tell you, we have like basically two seasons here. We have hot season and like really hot season.
Yes.
And we're just getting out of really hot season, which means
it's college football time.
That's right. Dun 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 dun. That's NFL, right?
Yeah, that's NFL.
But we're getting into the fall, and that's so nice. And one of the nice things about it is we both enjoy football.
What's your team? What's your college
USF.
team?
So
That's right.
Here's how it goes. So when I was a kid, my dad went to the University of Florida, so I grew up a Gator fan. And then when I went out to college, I actually went to USF. So I'm primarily a Bulls fan, but because we've done okay in the past, but we don't really make a lot of ripples in the old college football network.
Right.
So then
I get it.
It goes USF, and then it goes the Gators, and then Florida schools, SEC. So I follow enough.
That makes sense. So I'm a Gator through and through.
Yeah.
Gators. And so it's weird. It's one of those things like when you grow up in Florida, like you pick a team.
You must decide.
You got to decide young too.
Yeah.
So it was either you were Florida State or Florida.
Yeah. People just kind of look at you when you like Florida State, and you just kind of like, I don't know. And it's like they just blink at you like,
absolutely.
Oh, well, then decide now. Now is the time.
Yeah. So I just decided when I was young, I was going to be a Gator. And so weird thing, I was actually going to go into the military when I was in high school.
What?
Yeah. I went to the recruiting office and everything. And then I got a scholarship to go to UF. And so I was like, I'm going to UF because that's the team I liked my whole life.
Absolutely.
And so I ended up going to UF. But man, I can't wait for football season. Just can't wait. I think actually, by the time you listen to this podcast, I think the first week will be over.
Yeah.
So we might have some upsets already.
Yeah. You may not want to be a Florida fan.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. I've learned that if you aim low,
that's right. Set the bar on the ground. You can always jump over.
Which is sad, but that's what I'm learning lately. But so speaking of college, though, man, today we're going to be talking a little bit about that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about how valuable is a college education in today's society. That's one of the big things that has really ripped through. I think our culture, and I think young people today, is college even worth going to?
Yeah.
Back in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, which I think is why our parents always give us this, that the advice that they did, a college education was gold.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to college, you were set. If you went to college, you were going to have a job in something, right? And even further back, that was to be said about anyone who finished high school, right?
Right.
So it started off, you finished high school, you were educated, you were set. Then, only the elite really went to college. So then if you went to college, then you were set. Nowadays, it seems like almost like what college used to be today, what I'm sorry, what high school used to be is what today college is. So many people attend college today, like it just seems like you're not guaranteed
Right.
a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
So now people are really looking, especially with costs, and we'll get into some of this later. Is like, so what? Like, do I even need to go to college? Should I go to college? And I think first and foremost that I want to state at the very beginning, college is not a biblical mandate.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things. College is good. Working is a biblical mandate. Going back to last podcast, right?
Right.
Working is a biblical mandate. We looked at that Genesis 1:28. And you go into Thessalonians, you go into the Colossians. You need to be working,
Yes. Absolutely.
but college is not. But I found a website, and I thought it was interesting because they really kind of made a connection that I don't think is as tight as they want it to be. I'll give them, credit that they did make some caveats in there, but it still can be kind of misleading. So,
No, one thing before you go to that, real
okay,
quick, I thought it was really good that you said that college is not a biblical mandate. Because I wish more parents heard that. I
yeah,
don't know if that makes sense, but I think sometimes parents push kids so much
right,
to college, and I think that's what goes back to our other podcast, which talks about work.
right,
Because it's like, okay, you had this lifestyle for me this whole time, and now all of a sudden you're just throwing me out to college. And for Christians, this podcast is geared mostly towards
right,
believers. If you're an unbeliever, man, we're so glad that you're even here listening.
absolutely.
So thank you for that. We appreciate that. But
Love Jesus, but keep listening.
yeah, but I think it's important for parents to realize, man, don't you hear all the time stories, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but you hear all the time stories of parents that just push their kids to college,
Right,
push them to college because that's what you're supposed to do.
right.
Well, where does it say you're supposed to do that?
And that's where I think it went, back into the thinking of older time, where if you went to college, that's where you would. So what happened before is, um, we had a lot of times where we were having manufacturing jobs, right? You had the big economic boom in the early two and not the in the early 1900s,
Right.
right? The construction period during that time, and you had that boom come up, and then all of those jobs started to start to be filled. And then as technology advanced, you started to have those jobs phase out. And
Right.
so then the push was you need to get an education, a college education, because you need more specialized degrees. So then that was the thing. If you want to be successful in life, if you wanted to have a job that would you're be able to support your family, you needed to go to college. So that was the common knowledge, and at one point it was true. It was true. If you wanted that, then you needed to. You needed to go. You should have gone to college if you could, but that was only if for the people who could afford it, and usually you had to have high GPAs and stuff like that. Well, now what we see is as those jobs are being filled
Mm-hmm.
and even those in those education now we are kind of stuck at either now you either have to go postgraduate into the master's and doctorate level,
Right.
but then what we're seeing too is an erosion at the base of those skill jobs, welders, plumbers, electricians, that are eroding away. They're dying off, not to be crude, but that's what it unfortunately they're getting older, they're dying off, and we don't have people to replace them.
Right. Yeah. It's that's why I think this podcast I'm really looking forward to because there's a lot of questions. The last two I think kind of go hand in hand
Yeah,
with work and then college.
right.
Because again, this is where we're coming into our own as young adults who are really we're keening on and trying to hit. So tell me more about this
All right, so
article
I,
that
I
you
came across
brought up.
this little article. It's real quick, so we can address some things in it. So I don't want to mention websites because I don't
Yeah.
want to disparage anyone, but it says as Christians, God should be at the center of our lives. I'm tracking with you there,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that we should consider Him in everything we do. Still tracking. Now that you'll be off to college in a couple of months, let's see what the Bible says about furthering your education. Now, what I'll say here is the things that I actually put into Google is is it worth Christians going to college, or should Christians go to college? So the first thing it says is college is more valuable than material things. Your education is more, and they use Proverbs 16:16. It says that having wisdom and understanding is better than having silver and gold. Nice and expensive items can be enjoyable, but there are few things in life that can never be taken away and will never go out of style and that truly make you a better person. And education is one of those things. Yes, we all go to college with the intention of getting great jobs and starting successful careers, but earning a degree offers much more than financial benefits. It enriches your mind and opens the doors to new people, places, and ways of thinking. Don't focus so heavily on the monetary perks of obtaining a degree that you overlook the most significant ones.
Mhm.
So then the second verse that they use is 2 Timothy 2:15, which says, "Study to show yourself approved, study to show yourself a workman that is not afraid." Right. So 2 Timothy 2:15 tells us we should study and show God that we understand truth. This verse refers to knowing God's word and being able to point out false teachings and philosophies, but it applies to education as well. As a student, you should indulge yourself in your work and be the best you can be. Take your classes seriously by preparing for them and staying a step ahead in your work. 4 years can go by pretty quick, and when it's over, you want to look back knowing that you gave it your all.
Hmm.
So, my problem with these, number one, these verses have to do with studying the Bible,
Right.
not education in general. And there is a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to see that big difference.
Absolutely.
College is not the same thing as studying the Bible. And an education that you get, particularly from a secular university, is not the same education at all that you're
Right.
going to get from studying the Bible. So the biggest problem I see is, does college actually educate you? Does college give you wisdom and understanding? Does college teach truth? Because those are the three main tenets that they teach there. So is college education? So from a number side, I got some things off the internet. I just want to drop them on you. A 2011 study showed that college resulted in no significant improvement in standardized tests in 45% of its students after 2 years,
Wow.
and in 36% of its students after 4 years. That means 36% of the students who took a test after high school showed no improvements in that same test after college.
Wow. That's staggering.
1 out of 3.
That is staggering.
Yeah. So, and this was, a pilot test done in 2011, and this actually led to colleges needing to, now they're looking to make colleges report how well their students are doing on standardized tests after graduation and
Mm-hmm.
how well they're doing in the fields,
Wow.
because people are starting to go, wait a minute, what am I getting for my money?
Like, what's the point? Yeah.
Yeah, and like you have some colleges, putting in lazy rivers. Like what? They spend millions of dollars on this great lazy river,
Right.
but what's that have to do with education?
Mm-hmm.
What's that? So, let's see.
Well, it's like what you're talking about. How much money is spent on just activities and stuff. When you look at a lot of these, okay, for instance, we talked about the two schools that we're rooting for.
Right,
Um, a lot of that money in those schools comes from what, sports,
right,
right? Which, if you're in sports, that's awesome, and there's nothing against sports. But what my point is that if the money is coming through that and it's flowing through that, well, then what about the person that's going for science
right,
or math
right,
or something like that? There's not as much attention, right?
right.
The school isn't noticed for that usually, even if it's a great school in that field. A lot of times you're like, oh, University of Florida, they have a great football school. I love that school. They're known for their hospital and stuff like that, Shands. But there's other like the arts and things like that where you're just not going to see the fluctuation of attention that goes through those things. And so a lot of people are like, well, what am I doing? Like, what's the point here? Because everything is centered around these athletes or this, and we fill in the blank of what that school's
Right.
known for instead of the overall what it should be. You go to high school, every school that you go to, or even elementary school, every class you go to is treated equally. Like you're
Right.
getting the same attention, the same
Right.
information is thrown at you. You go to college, a lot of times it's not that way.
No, I mean, yeah, and what we're talking about, again, to be specific, is we're talking about the education you receive from a college,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and what you're saying is so true. If I go to, the University of Florida and I go to your medical program, right, you're going to have great buildings, lots of
Right.
new stuff and cutting edge. If I and I don't necessarily know, but if you go to maybe like your accounting building,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that that building's going to be as nice. I don't know that those students are going to get treated the same, actually.
Right.
So, it is true their education isn't necessarily the same. And, they even see like half the money. I was looking at some studies and it says half the money isn't even used for your education. Half the money is used for this thing that they call experience, the student experience, which has nothing to do with academics. I mean, this is what they're doing to build, the new
Food courts.
food courts,
and
like I said, a lazy river,
bowling
the workout
alleys
place,
and
bowling out,
yeah.
all of these things that, okay, great, but the price of college is so expensive right now. When you think about it, the economic cost, some people are the average student is accumulating $40,000 worth of debt
Wow.
when they're going to leave college. Okay, so these these poor kids are, they're told right by their parents and other people, go to college, go to college, go to college. Well, I don't have the money to go to college. It's okay. We're gonna let you go ahead and get Stafford loan or whatever you're getting,
Hmm.
and
That
college are
sounds great.
more than willing to give you
Right.
that money, right? Because there's investors that are like, yes, because the interest rate on some of those things are like 8-9%, and they're banking on that,
Hmm.
and so then you're taking out these loans and you're paying half of that money is literally just for experience, some of which you'll never get.
Right.
Like how many times are you gonna be in that lazy river?
Right. And what's interesting too is you were talking about this, the actual percentage of people who have the degree and they get in the field that they're in.
Yeah.
Like the degree, like how many people actually go into that field of work?
30% of people who go for a specific degree actually work in that field. That means 70% of the people get a degree and then find themselves in
Doing
somewhere else.
something else.
Perfect example of this, a family member who got a degree in deaf education, right?
Hmm.
So got a degree in deaf education. She doesn't do anything. She is right now a person who works as a project leader at a business I think it's a financial place, but so it has nothing to do with deaf education. Now she uses her degree on Sunday to interpret. She's done
Right.
that before, but she doesn't use that degree for what she does.
Right.
But yet she still has to pay for that degree.
Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
funny enough story about the other is a bachelor degree did help advance her, but the job that, going back to the last podcast, the job that she started in as a teenager, she worked her way up that company until she got to the position where she is today, and then she transferred companies. But my point is that she didn't get the job because of her necessarily of her college education. She
Right.
got the job because she showed herself excellent. She dominated, like we said, in that area, showed light in that area, and they kept giving her more responsibility. Faithful
Right.
in little, faithful in much.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's just same thing. 70% of people don't even work in that. So you're going,
Wow.
I don't know, should we actually do this?
Yeah.
So okay, so what are you gonna have some economic costs and benefits? Like I said, the average 4-year graduate accumulates about $40,000 in debt. That just needs to be a red alarm to you.
Yeah.
40,000 because you're thinking right now, what am I going to be doing, and am I going to be able to pay that off?
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what it is now, but I know that a teacher back when I was looking it up had what $36,000 a year, right? So if you accumulate $40,000 in debt, but yet your salary is only going to be 40,000 or $36,000, like you're underwater
Yeah.
right from the
Absolutely.
go.
Right. Absolutely.
Now, what I will say is studies have shown an average 4-year degree earns about $17,000 more a year than a high school graduate.
Hmm.
So there is some benefit there.
Right. There's some give and take there. Right.
But again, that's average.
Hmm.
Okay, so you're talking about all high school students, all college. So there's going to be a lot of gray area and
Right.
a lot of gray area that's going to allow for if you don't have a college degree, you can still make a decent amount of money. And if you do have a college degree, you may not make as much money.
Right. Right, that's good. And then there's the correlation between college tuition and the lines of credit for student loans and the government subsidies.
Uh-huh.
It's amazing the increase in tuition has less to do with the need based on more quality education. When I went to school, I think the year I went, it was the largest freshman class I think in the
Wow.
history of UF. It was crazy how many people there were. But I remember them talking about the tuition, and I can't remember what the tuition was back then, but I know that they've raised it since then,
Yeah.
obviously. And I think a lot of it has to do with sports,
Yeah. Of
to
course.
fund the sports. Um,
I mean, so the thing is, like anytime you're in a business, right, and you'll know this, anytime you get a budget, right, most of the time you try and spend all the money that's in your budget. Why? Because if in a business environment, if you don't use that money up, the business is going to go, oh, well, obviously they don't need that much money. We're going to cut their budget.
right.
So the schools are like, well, the government says that they're going to approve this much money. So let's raise our tuition so we soak all that money in
Hmm.
and we'll figure out how to use it later.
Right.
That's literally what they're doing. It's not that they're offering a better education for the money that they're giving. They're literally just, I need to get as much money as I can. It helps self perpetuate themselves, right? So they can hire teachers or cement their kind of lot in life there. And in the meantime, we're the ones paying it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another question: what are the spiritual costs versus the benefits of college?
Well, spiritual costs I think, are even higher. We learned earlier, and I think it was our second podcast, or that there is no neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says, "You either for me or you are against me."
Right.
The most dangerous statement I hear from parents is that college teaches you how to think.
Ugh, what a horrible statement.
Because think of what you're just saying. In the case of a secular school, you're going to send your children to the world for 4 years where they're going to be immersed in instruction,
Mm-hmm.
not just in classes, but in that whole environment, that experience that you're paying for. And they're going to be indoctrinated in teaching them how to think as the world.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the one of the things that you were saying as the church, this is in direct contrast to Deuteronomy 6,
Absolutely.
7 through
Deuteronomy
9.
6, it says, look what it says. Not only, so it starts as the Shema, and it says, "You shall love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and your might." And then it says, "Put these words on your heart."
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." That's discipleship. You're
Right.
teaching it. And what are you teaching them? Okay, so go back to verse 5. "You shall love the Lord with all of your heart and all your soul and all your might." Now, might there actually means all of your mental might.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of combined, because the body follows the mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's taught throughout scripture. So what they're trying to say there is your mind too. Where kind of a big word is epistemology. Like, where do you find truth, and how do you make decisions in your mind? You need to love the Lord your God with all of your mind as well, and so you need to teach others how to love with all of their mind, and that's
Right.
something we don't do.
Right, especially in secular colleges, and let's just be honest. I think some Christian colleges you're not seeing that anymore.
Oh no.
Um,
And
uh,
some Christian colleges have that Christian on there for no reason.
right, sometimes just to get a write off. To be
Right.
honest, I mean, and then we look at Ephesians 6:4, which says this: Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord.
Great
I mean,
word.
this means we're supposed to teach our children how to think as free people.
Right.
Meaning free from the bondage of sin and deception as Christians. Again, we want to point everything that we're talking about on these podcasts towards a biblical and Christian view of the
Mhm.
world, how we're supposed to handle these things. And so I think this is important. Ephesians 6:4.
Yeah. I mean, that's, again, what we're supposed to be doing, and that's where parents should be coming in, but just the church, when you talk about Deuteronomy 6, he wasn't just supposedly specifically talking to parents. He was saying the whole culture, all of the nation of Israel should be teaching its children. And as the church now, we need all of the church to be teaching its children
Right.
how to live. So, and it's that word paideia, and exactly what you said. Paideia was something that they used where they had a person teach a person who was a free. So coming from a freeman, you had free people and slaves back in the Greek times, and the free people, who were the ones that owned business, had money, that their children, they taught them, this is how you think like a free person. This is not how you think like a slave. And in the same way, we've been freed from the bondage of sin, and we need to teach them, how do you think truth? How do you
Right.
think like a free person, meaning free from the world?
That's good. That's good. Most colleges you go to are not going to give you that wisdom and understanding that this is talking about,
No.
the Bible's talking about, because we know where true wisdom and knowledge comes from.
Right.
It's the fear of the Lord. Proverbs 1:7 talks about that. And I think it's good to also state that wisdom in the Bible, specifically Proverbs, is usually characterized by skillfully living to God's glory.
Yeah, that's what wisdom usually is when you see someone who is wise, they're able to skillfully live, but it goes beyond that. It's skillfully live in a pleasing way to God,
Yeah.
in a way that's glorifying God. To do that, you need to learn those critical thinking skills, philosophy, logic, those types of things that help you learn how to see the world, put it into a specific order, and actually live it. And
Hmm.
so, um, you know, colleges aren't going to tell you to do that. They don't have wisdom because they don't fear the Lord.
Right. Most colleges are the opposite. They're not going to teach you truth because
Right.
they're denying the truth. Most classes you go into, they're going to. I mean, some college. I've gone into classes before where they've said, "Okay, how many of you are Christians?"
Right.
First of all, that's wrong. You shouldn't
Right.
be doing that.
Right.
But I mean, let's look at the Old Testament. Same type of stuff happened. How many of you believe in God?
Right.
You know, and if so, then we're going to persecute you
Right.
for it. The same things are happening in these secular colleges. Secular philosophy can't account for universal truth, and because of that, the postmodern thinking denies that there's even an existence of God. You know,
Right.
it's I don't even know how to say it. It's almost like it's foolishness to them. Obviously, it's what the Bible
Right.
says. It's
Right.
foolishness to them, to those who are perishing. You know, it's I don't know. What do you think about that?
The funny thing about that is exactly it's foolishness to them, but they're the ones that are the fools because they sit there and say, "Well, there's no truth. You know, there's no absolutes." Well, you're absolutely sure about that, and then it trips them up, and then it's like, "Well, if you can't have truth, then what is any of this doing?
Right.
If you don't have a standard of truth, then how can you say something's right or wrong?" Because they're real quick to tell you that you're wrong in the way you're thinking as a Christian. You go, "Well, how can you say I'm wrong? How do you know that's true that I'm wrong?
Hmm.
You don't even believe in truth," and it trips them up. But see, we don't teach people how to think like that, and so we don't even know. We just buy into it.
Right.
And part of that is because we even, in one sense, we support the world because what we do is we said, okay, you're going to go to college. And like that phrase that I just hate, you're going to go to college and you're going to learn how to think. Well,
Hmm.
all of a sudden, what they're saying, what in the mind of some of these young people are thinking is that, okay, I'm going to go to college and learn how to think. And then sure enough, they're more than happy to tell you how to think.
Right.
They're more than happy to indoctrinate you because as soon as they indoctrinate you, then they can put you in that cycle.
Hmm.
Then all of a sudden, instead of thinking like a free person, they can make you think like a slave, even though you're not, and a
Right.
slave to their system.
Oh,
And you're going to help
absolutely.
perpetuate their system.
Absolutely. And professors can be very intriguing.
Yeah,
Their words can be very smooth,
yeah,
and I mean, it's like the Bible says, they can almost like tickle your ears, even though the Bible refers to something different. Pastors
right,
doing that, but I think false pastors doing that. But I think in some ways, these professors and things like that can tell you what they want you to hear. And there's so many young people that go off to college who were strong in the Lord, who
right.
were in church every week doing all these things, and then they go off to college and they come back to visit, and man, you have no clue. You're like,
Right.
who? Wait, what happened? What happened? It's like literally being brainwashed.
And the deceptive part is because they have so many degrees, right? So many letters behind their name. And
Right.
when they talk, so there's something called common grace, and that's where God has shown in general the world to something. So they are able to speak, 2 plus 2 is 4, right?
Hmm.
That's a truth. But they don't say why 2 plus 2 is 4. They don't
Right.
they don't recognize the God of 2 plus 2 equaling 4, and
Right.
and the God of math and the God of logic. And because they don't do that, really they're telling a half truth, right? And as we know, a half truth is a whole lie.
Right.
So that's why I say they can't even teach you truth. They can teach you facts that yes, you check them out and they are facts, but because those facts aren't based in who God is and what He's done, it's a lie. They're teaching you lies, and they're teaching you lies to get you sucked in because they do have an agenda, and that is to help perpetuate their worldview. They get you into their worldview, and like we learned before, Satan is hoping to make you as ineffective as possible.
Right.
So there's something behind them, right? We talked about this before. Satan is there and he is trying to manipulate you to make you ineffective, and that's what we need to fight against.
Hmm. So, as we start to wind down a little bit on this podcast, let's talk about the spiritual and we know the spiritual and financial cost of college is great, but does that mean we shouldn't go to college?
No.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so yeah, I think we both have agreed there's a reason to go to college,
Hmm.
and I think there's several factors. I think one of the biggest factors is going to be more of a pragmatic, and that is in the sense of if your job requires you to have a certain certification, then you need to go to college to get that
Right.
certification. So for me as a physician assistant, I have to be certified. In order to be certified, I have to have a degree.
Hmm.
Okay, so I have to have a degree, then I have to pass a test, then to get licensure, and then I can practice.
Right.
So if I'm going to do that, then I need to go to college and get that certain degree. And both as an athletic trainer when I was getting my bachelor's degree, and then as a PA, those programs weren't offered in Christian schools. I had looked,
Hmm.
and maybe they were in some small one that I wasn't aware of. But in my immediate search that I had done, and this is back in the day before the internet was real powerful, and you could Google wasn't all that good
Yeah,
yet.
really. Yeah.
So I didn't have all this, so I did the best that I could with the information that I had, and so I made a decision. I went to technical school, and I still think that that's something that you need to consider.
Hmm. Yeah.
I still think as churches and we need to rethink the model in total, even what we do with Christian colleges, and try to get the church to invest in the education of our young people because they are so important.
Hmm.
And many times we're so willing to give so much money to people who are across the world for missions, yet we ignore what we have here. And Jesus said, first we take care of Jerusalem. I'm
Hmm.
not saying don't do missions.
Right.
Do missions. Please do missions.
Right. Absolutely. We're called to do missions. Yeah.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is don't ignore your children
Right.
who are down the hallway.
Yeah.
And so churches need to come up with a new some type of way to bring the cost down of Christian education, and even a post high school Christian education, that we can start effectively educating our young people to be effective in the world, to be image bearers in the world, that we talked about podcast.
Right. So basically, what you're saying is, does your occupation require a specific degree?
Right.
Is what
So
you're
if it,
thinking.
so
So
if it,
that's how you would factor in where you.
right.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, that's going to be one thing. The next is, do you even need a degree for what you're doing?
Right. Right. Right.
If you go into the Mike Rowe Works, I think is the thing, you'll see there are over 3 million jobs right now where no one's filling them. They have 3 million jobs ready to go. Somebody needs to fill them right now, but nobody wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't require a college education. They may require a 6-week training course,
Right.
maybe a safety course, and maybe here's how you kind of do things and get you going.
Yeah.
They're not being filled, but those are jobs. Those are
Mhm.
things that we need to do. So do you even need a degree for what you're doing?
Yeah. I have friends that have literally, they're married, have kids, they have a job, and like to get certain certifications, they're taking night classes to
Right.
help. And it's not a full college, but it's getting that degree and that certification and what to further what they're doing. To be like we talked about last podcast, to be excellent at that
Right.
skill.
And if you're just getting a generalized degree, I would strongly think about what you're trying to do there, because is the cost of what that degree is going to be worth your debt?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to get a degree in something and not have a job attached to it, all of a sudden you graduate with $40,000 worth of debt. What do you do now?
Mm-hmm.
Now you're having to make hard decisions because you're going to have to pay back that debt, and it can limit what you're able to do. So don't just go to college. Don't just go to college to go to college, because that's the next step. Have a plan of what you're doing.
Right.
And if that means that you take a couple years off and you're working, right, still being productive,
Right.
still working hard, being excellent, dominion, all of those things, do that. And then as you see, like, oh, this is what I'm interested in doing, then go ahead and go to college, and you have a purpose in doing that.
Yeah. And I think it's also good to not just go off to college just to get away. I
Right.
think it's good if you just need a generalized degree, just stay local. Stay
Right.
local, be faithful to your local church, be involved in ministry, be discipled as a young person. I know for you and I, we love discipleship.
Right.
And it's just great when young people come up to us and says, "Hey, I'm sticking around and I would love to just be discipled."
So, young adults, the thing about young adults is they're still cool to high schoolers, right?
Yeah.
I'm not cool to a high schooler
Right.
anymore, right? I'm
Right.
old, fat, and bald.
Yeah.
And so you can have an in where others don't, because
Yeah.
they still see you and like, man, I want to be like that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So the disciple, use that and disciple them.
Right. The third
Um,
thing is, have you been trained in how to think and to reason truthfully?
Yeah. So this is, the church should have done this, and we need to get better at this.
Mhm.
We need to offer, I don't know if it's, you do some type of training classes, or just offer them where you have things online, because I think that's one of the biggest resources we don't use as the church, is online.
Yeah.
It's huge because you put the class out there, and it's out there for anyone to access at any time at their leisure, and when it's convenient for them. And so that's something that I think is valuable to the
Mhm.
church that we can use. Are we putting things out for our parishioners to go ahead and see and do? And one of those should be, how do you think? Critical thinking skills. Have we trained someone in logic? I've never taken a logic class. I've
Right.
read a lot about logic, but I've never been trained formally in it.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be,
Right.
because that's how the world works. God is logical.
Yeah.
God is a God who is logical, and critical thinking skills are going to be necessary. When we look at the Bible, we have to employ those types of things. So we need to be people who are doing that. I think, again, you don't necessarily need to go to a formal training to do that, but we need to offer resources for people to have.
I agree. And what we've talked about a few times is just technology can be a blessing and a curse. And in this type of what we're talking about, this is a blessing.
Right.
Use it. I mean, the church should be using it. Why should the world be cutting edge when the church has the same type of minds?
Right.
If more so, I mean, God has given men and women minds that are like unbelievable when it
Sure.
comes to this kind of stuff. So, yeah, I agree with you. The church should be using it. And then the last thing, what is the average salary for the field you're going into, and how many college graduates actually find work in that field?
And this is where you find some of the sinister nature of college and some of these programs. one of the biggest things is another family member went for firefighting, right?
Mhm.
And he wanted to be a firefighter. So he went to school and he finished well. He got an award, for excellence and all these things in firefighting. He goes to get a job, and he finds that he's never going to get a job
Yeah.
because the only thing they wanted there were no jobs available. When a job would become available in his area, there were literally like 300 applicants.
Yeah.
Okay. And with those 300 applicants, many of those people already had prior experience. They had military experience, prior experience. And then there's him who did well in school, but he has no experience. And he had
Right.
even with connections and all that, he had no opportunity to actually have that job. Yet, he still has to pay his bill for school.
Right.
And that was the thing that was upsetting to me. It was like, and you guys know that because they were doing classes like 4 times a year. You guys know that there's not this many jobs, and you're still putting out 30 students
Yeah.
4 times a year, 120 students every year when you know that there's no jobs left for them. What are you
Right.
doing? Why are you taking people's money? And in one sense, to me, I'm like, you're deceiving people and you're just
Right.
taking their money from 'em. But there's a lot of programs that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be responsible for our own selves, and we need to go and do the research. How much are you going to make, and are you going to find a job in that? One of the things, a lawyer, you think a lawyer makes a ton of money. It costs, in some cases, $150,000 to go to law school,
Right.
right? And when you put all the debt together, and many of the jobs that you get as a lawyer, $50,000.
Yeah.
Okay, not
Wow.
everyone, not everyone's these big,
The ones you see on
billboard
TV,
lawyers, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone's for the people around here.
Yeah. I hope he listens.
Yeah. But I mean, so, is your job the amount of debt that you're going to accumulate? Are you going to be able to pay that off easily? Is there even a job? Are you going to get out with all of this debt and find out there's no job for you?
Yeah.
But you have to be responsible for yourself. Personal responsibility is huge in the Bible, and one of those things means you need to do the research before
Right.
and find it out. Don't just take someone's word for it. They are there to make money.
Absolutely.
You need to do the research yourself. And God has given us, praise the Lord, God has given us great technology. He's given us Google.
Mm-hmm.
And we can find this stuff out now.
Yep.
Maybe before we couldn't, and we had a little bit more leg to stand on about being deceived. But today we don't. We need to do our own research.
Right. I agree. I think, man, what a good practical podcast this has been, and I hope this has been helpful because again, we're talking to a lot of people who are in this bubble right now,
Right.
of new jobs, schooling, what should I be doing? And if parents, and if you're listening to this right now, I hope this is helpful for you too.
Right.
When you're considering where to send your children, should I send my children somewhere?
Right.
Should I keep them here just for a little bit so they're just more engaged and just rooted strongly on the Word of God, and then send them out into the world so they can be that salt and light we talked about even last time on our podcast.
I mean, I can't think of a better place to be than connected to your home church and around your family where you can continue to be trained.
Yeah.
So if you're able to go to college locally, I mean, that's a great thing.
Right.
I understand going off. I understand some people want, some parents want their kids to continue on their tradition of going to a certain school or, things like that. And every case is going to be different. But, honestly, if you're local and you stay local and you can get a quality education, that was something even a guy named Jordan Peterson, who's a psychologist, and he taught at Harvard and taught at University of Toronto, taught at some of the most prestigious schools, said, I've seen the programs at Harvard that I taught, and I've seen programs at other local schools, and he goes, they're essentially the same.
Yeah.
Because books are books, information's information.
Right.
The difference is the prestige. The difference is the caliber of student they allow in, as far as how well you did on standardized tests and how much money you have.
Right.
So a lot of times the education you get is very similar,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get more education online if you need to, and more expertise. So staying local and there's a strong case for it.
Yeah, just be wise is what
Yep,
we're saying. Just
absolutely.
be wise in what you're doing, the choices that you make, and seek counsel on it. I know that's overused sometimes, but seek counsel from your parents, from those who have gone before you. So yeah, I think this has been very helpful. At least I hope it's been helpful.
I mean, and if you really want to know, more, you should email us.
Email us. Yeah. That was a good segue into the closing here.
Smooth.
Yeah.
Project224podcast@gmail.com.
Absolutely.
Hit us up on Facebook,
Instagram.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, be like, what college should I go to?
And we'll say, well, send us
Let me get some questions.
There's a college that, Project 224 University. We'll take tuition anytime. Oh, man, that's great. That's great. Well, everybody, thanks for listening once again. I hope this has been helpful to you. This has been such a joy to be with you. Again, please check us out on Facebook, Instagram. You can email us if you can. Like our pages, pass them along, share them. Send comments, rate us. I think ratings are good. Like if
Yeah.
you rate us, it helps
The
too.
more ratings you get and comments and whatnot, the more they see that that's become popular, and so they're going to put it at the higher, the higher up they're going to rank it when you search things.
Right. So we really appreciate it, everybody. Hope this finds you well, and we'll talk with you soon. God bless.
See you guys.